Okay. I, I just want to go over the total revenue and the elasticities as sort of a review because there's always one or two total revenues, and there probably seems like four or five elasticities. All right, just remember, if price and total revenue, and you get total revenue by price times quantity, if price and total revenue go up, and they both go in the same direction, it's inelastic. If they both go down, it's inelastic. If they go in an inverse relationship, price goes up, total revenue goes down, it's elastic. Price goes down and total revenue goes up, it's elastic. All right, now, a lot of times they won't go like price goes down. They'll have something like the demand for corn is down. If total revenue is up, what type of good is corn? I mean, so if demand for corn went down, demand left, price down, total revenue up, then it's an elastic good. All right. Demand elasticity is percentage change of quantity demanded over percentage change of price. And, for the supply, it's percentage change of quantity supplied over the percentage change of price. Here, it's an absolute value. You don't care if it's negative or positive. Less than one, inelastic. And remember, elasticity is how a good responds to a change in price. Well, if it's inelastic, it's not going to respond a lot, so it's less than one. Unit elastic is one, and then if it's elastic, it's going to, respond greatly to price, so it's going to be greater than one. All right, income elasticity, like all the elasticity, percentage change quantity demanded on top, percentage change income. It could only tell you if it's a normal or inferior good. Normal good is a positive coefficient. They move in the same direction. That's income and demand. Inferior good is a negative coefficient, income up, demand down. And the last one is cross price elasticity, which again is the percentage change of quantity demanded on top of good A over the percentage change of price on the bottom of good B. Positive number substitute, negative complement. Let's just remember cross price can only do substitutes and complements. Income can only do normal and inferior goods. All right, I'm going to put the chat up in case anyone has any questions. Oh, no, the chat, the whole thing. All right, let's see if I try that again. Oh, geez. I'm just trying to move this chat box a little. I'll try to figure that out, or else. All right, so here's what I want to do. I want to show you some multiple choice, and I don't want anyone to answer for a minute. So give everyone a chance, and then I'll ask for your answer. So the cross price elasticity of demand between goods J and K is -3. A 20% decrease in the price of good K will result in. All right, give everyone a minute. Okay, what do we have here? All right, I got a lot of Ellens, and that would be -3, and quantity demanded is X, and we know the price is going to be -0.2. When you cross multiply, you would get an increase of 60%. Okay. Um, if it's -3, what type of good was this? Could we type in what type of good this would be if it's -3? Anyone? Cross price. Yes, compliments. Okay. All right. Question like this is almost guaranteed to be on it. Like where you just got to plug in the formula. For whatever reason, sometimes when they give you the cross price elasticity, kids have harder problems with it. But I just wanted to put that on because that's the typical one they would ask. Okay. Could I move? Okay. Now, I'm going to give everyone a minute, and I'd like you to figure out the consumer surplus. Take a minute and figure out consumer surplus. Okay, what do we have for consumer surplus here? Okay, all right, good job. There is no consumer surplus. Why is that? Because consumer surplus is what you're willing to pay minus what you actually pay. Well, there's only one price here, 4. So people are willing to pay 4 and they actually pay 4, so there's no consumer surplus. So anytime like there's a perfectly elastic supply or a perfectly elastic demand, there would be 0 consumer surplus. Okay. Or if it's a supply, 0 producer surplus. All right, you guys did a good job on that. It's usually a little tricky. All right. If cotton is used to produce towels, an increase in the price of cotton will result in which of the following changes in the towel market? Give you a minute. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, great. We are crushing the C. Cotton would be a resource here. Shift supply left. Okay. Now, here's what I'd like to ask you. If total revenue went down, and give everyone a minute, I'll ask you for the answer. If total revenue went down for towels, what type of good is towels? Give people a minute. If total revenue went down for towels, what type of good is towels? Okay, what type of good do we have? Yes, we do have an elastic good, right? Because if supply shifts left, we have an increase in price. We have an increase in price and total revenue going down. We have an elastic good. Now, that's how they could ask it. If cotton is used to produce towel, an increase in the price of cotton will result in which of the following change? They would maybe say an increase in the price of cotton. What would result with that? What type of good would that be if sales went down, expenditures went down, total revenue went down? They all mean the same. Okay, you guys did a really good job on that one. Making sweaters becomes more profitable than hats. Which of the following will occur? Give everyone a minute again. If making sweaters becomes more profitable than making hats, which one of the following will occur? Okay, what do we have here? All right, we're coming out with all C's. Good. This is alternative production. We don't get many of these. People are going to make more sweaters than hats. Supply of sweaters will shift right. Therefore, the price of sweaters will decrease. Okay. An interesting question here. Following an excise tax of $6 in a competitive market, the seller's after price tax falls from 14 to 13. Which of the following statements to this tax is true? Again, I'll give you a minute. By the way, of course, stop me in the chat if you have a question about something. About another 30, 40 seconds. Okay, what do we have for this one? I got C, D, 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 getting mostly Ds. E, okay, I graphed it, okay? So the original equilibrium was 14. And the producer is now getting 13, right? So that would be 14. The producer's line from the producer's 13 up to the new equilibrium has to be 6, because that has to be the tax. For it to be 6, equilibrium price then has to be 19. Okay. Anyone have questions on that? Because a couple of people did not get it.
Mr. Bressler,
Yeah.
I have a question. So when we're doing like these like type of graphs and we're trying to like determine like which like if the seller or buyer like takes all the tax, like what how do you know that?
All right. Well, you understand how I got 19?
Yeah, I get how you got 19. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, if it's 19, previously, KG, the consumer was paying 14. Now he's paying 19. So he's paying $5 of the tax. The producer used to get 14. Now the producer's getting 13. So there's paying $1 of the tax.
Okay.
Did that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if they say there's an excise tax and supply is more inelastic than demand, then the supplier, whichever one's more inelastic, and they give you that in the problem, the more inelastic of supply or demand is going to pay the bigger burden of tax. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And while I have this, really, this is the thing in the graphing quiz most people got. Below it's all down here, producer surplus. Okay. And the tax revenue box goes from the new equilibrium down to the old supply curve. And that would be tax revenue here. And then consumer surplus up here. Okay. All right. For whatever reason, I think you guys did well. This gets tricky. I would graph it like I did. You probably don't have to graph it, but me, it makes it just easier. Which of the following is true of cross price elasticity of demand? I'll give you a minute. Okay, what do we got here? Okay, we've got broccoli. Okay, good. All right. It can indicate if a good is a necessity or a luxury. That's really true of elasticity of demand. Because if it's inelastic, it's probably a necessity. And if it's elastic, it's probably a luxury. It's close to zero. if it's two goods are closely related, they're complements, and then it would be negative. It'd be less than zero. It's always negative because demand curves are downward sloping. That would be true of demand elasticity, but we use absolute number. It increases as income increases. Well, we know in income elasticity, which this is not, a normal good is positive and an inferior good is negative. Consumer surplus exists because of, give you a minute. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, we're knocking out the C's. That is correct. I would expect tomorrow there'll be one type of question like this, like a definition question on consumer surplus. And then I would say there'll be one where you have to figure out, they'll give you like, numbers, and you'll have to figure out 1/2 base times height, and maybe one where you have to say like letter A is consumer surplus above the price below demand, or letter B is producer surplus below the price above supply, or letter C is deadweight loss in the deadweight loss area. Okay. And they might have that for price ceilings and price floors, but there's usually one definition and then the rest are graphs. If government eliminates an effective minimum wage in a competitive labor market, which of the following is true? Give you a minute again. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, B as in broccoli is true. Uh, the number of people employed it'll actually increase. The number of people employed will increase. Obviously they do. There'll be no quantity supplied will equal quantity demand because we'll be at the equilibrium, and E is not right for that too. All right. I'll just go over this again. The one that I think trips guys up the most is when they ask for how the tax is. And the tax is from the new equilibrium straight down to the old supply curve, where here it would be P3 minus P1 to be honest, they usually give you numbers. So P3 minus P1. In this one, and KG, you asked this kind of differently before, but from P2 to P3, BC, that's how much the consumer pays in tax. In HF, it's how much the producer pays in tax. And BCHF is the total tax revenue. DE is deadweight loss caused by the increase of price, driving some consumers out of the market. G is producer surplus, A is consumer surplus. No, Calden, I'm sorry, I just saw that. So they said, and wages are determined by supply and demand. Once you take the binding price floor out. So minimum wage, say, is $15 when you have the binding price floor. But say, then the equilibrium is 10. Sorry for these numbers. At $15, we could say 75 people have jobs. And then at $10, you have 100. Well, when you take away binding minimum wage, the binding price floor, like I hope to do here, you're going to go back to the equilibrium where supply and demand does determine, and 10 is going to get you 100. More people will be working. The price that workers got went from 15 to 10. Did that answer your question, Calden? Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Like, because be like a couple of questions on excise tax. Does anyone have any questions on the excise tax graph? P3, Peter, is the price consumers pay after tax. P3 minus P1 is the length of that line, like the piece of the D triangle. That's how big the tax is. Now you see where they went Q2? Need two spots straight up, like determining the gap of the supply curve would be the tax. They use Q2 here. The only thing I don't like about using the Q2 one is there's no numbers on the top there. I like to look for P3 minus P1 would be the tax. P3 is the new price consumers have to pay. P1 is the price producers get after they send the tax to the government. So let's put some numbers here to kind of make it maybe a little better. So if P3 is 5, and then we go 3, and then 1. All right, so the tax would be 5 minus 1, which is 4. The consumers used to pay 3 at P2. At P3, they pay 5, so their tax is 2. Even though the producers are getting 5, they got to ship 4 of that tax to government, 4 of those dollars to government. The actual price they're getting to keep after the tax is P1, which is $1. Does that make sense, Peter? Okay. For a normal good, the income effect of a price change refers to the change in consumption of that good that occurs because of a change in. Give you a minute. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, it is A, all right? All right, because the income effect is about purchasing power. Um, Remember the three reasons demand is downward sloping, or the law of demand: substitution effect, income effect, law of diminishing marginal utility. I also, for a normal good, if then they talk about price, no one cares about a normal good. Okay? Because a normal good only has to do with income going up or down, and that's part of time. But you guys did a good job realizing it was the purchasing power. All right. Now, the demand for a substitute good, that is a reason why the law of demand, as is marginal utility, the law of diminishing marginal utility, I can definitely I could definitely guarantee there's a law of demand. All right, KG, I'll try to draw this graph again. So here, KG, before minimum wage, 100 people were working $10 an hour. Now government in $15 an hour. Okay. A lot more people want to work. 150 people want to work at $15 an hour. But because the wages went up, companies are demanding less workers because they can't afford the high. They're only hiring 75. Okay. So at a $15 minimum wage, only 75 people are working. But when you take that minimum wage away, you go back to the equilibrium, $10, and 100 people are working. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Jack, are you asking why E is wrong for this problem? Because it's not the income effect. For a normal good, the income effect is what they're asking about. If they asked about the law of demand or why demand is downward sloping, E could be a proper answer. Did that make sense to you, Jack? Yes, income effect is always about purchasing power. And by the way, price change has nothing to do with marginal utility. Marginal utility is just like your satisfaction goes down because, like, it's my seventh donut, not because of the price of the donuts. Okay. But whenever you see price, it's not going to have anything to do with marginal utility. Okay. That was my last question for the day. Jeez, that was a black screen. Does anyone have any questions they would want to ask? If you haven't taken the practice test, I'd really recommend it. Yeah, do you mean like, I mean, consumer surplus, Dave, would be, so say the equilibrium is 50. I mean, if it's a triangle, you might have to. I mean, it's only 1/2 base times height, right? And if this was 10, and let's put this as 20. The triangle would be one, and yes, you might have to calculate it. So the height here is 10, 20 minus 10. and the base is 50, so 10 times 50 would be 500, divided by 2 is 250. Okay, Dave? Okay. I'm gonna get to 20 on the practice test in a second. I can ignore it. So this is a ceiling. To be binding, it has to be below the equilibrium, the upside down house, Ryan. If it's above the equilibrium, it's non-binding. We're just going to go to the equilibrium price and quantity. All right. If it's a floor, it has to be on the upside down house, meaning floors are usually at the bottom, but here the floor is going to be on the top, be binding. If it's below the equilibrium, we're going to ignore it and just go to the equilibrium. Did that make sense to you, Ryan? Okay. All right. I think I have the practice test where I could find it. Hold on, let me see. Okay, number 20. An increase in supply. Of course, I just went by it. An increase in supply is caused by an increase in input prices. No, that would shift supply left. Suppliers' expectation. Was the answer D there for 21? Rather for 20. Yeah, I think it's D because in a decrease in price. So say I could use like I don't know, to make something, I could use like leather or silk, and I could use either one of them, right? Well, if I'm using silk and then there's a decrease in the price of leather, I could use leather instead. That would decrease production cost, and that would shift supply right. Did that make sense to you for number 20? D? Says B? Yeah, I think like the answer key is wrong there. Because of supplier expectations of higher price in the future, they would supply less now because they're making more money in the future. So I would say D is the right answer there.
So can you explain 20 again? I'm a little lost. Like,
Uh, you want 20 again?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So an increase in supply. So I need supply to shift right. An increase in input prices would shift supply left. Suppliers' expectation of higher prices in the future, they would supply less now because they can make more money in the future. So that would shift supply left. An increase in the price of good, that's going to slide up and down the curve. That's a change in quantity supply. A decrease in the price of a substitute. So that means something else that I could use, like instead of using silk, I could use leather. And now the price of leather went down. So that means my resource price went down. I'm going to make more profit. So I'm going to shift supply right. So it'd be D.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions anyone has? 66. Um, let me get the chat back. All right, a group of dairy farmers are trying to raise milk by 10%. Price for elasticity of milk is 0.75. Point 0.75. Then how supply of milk is inelastic? How much should farmers reduce their milk production to obtain a 10% increase? And price. How much should farmers reduce their milk production to obtain a 10% increase? Okay, so it would be like, right, 10% on them, and then X on the top. If you cross multiply, I think you're gonna get B, 7.5%. Does that make sense, David? Okay. If demand for golf is unit price elastic, okay, and the local golf course increases the greens fees for using the course. All right. So if it's unit price elastic, total revenue is not going to change. So there's not going to be a decrease or an increase in total revenue. But if they increase the green fees, say by 10%, people are going to play 10% less rounds. So that's the only way total revenue would not change. So it would be C. Okay. Matt, those are the tricky total revenue questions. Anyone else with any questions? No, unit elastic price could go up or down and total revenue stays the same. Could I go over 50? Yes. I left my practice test at school. 50. Great. These are the ones I can't see. If rent control is at R0, here, I won't worry about this. But if it's at R0 here, right? If you go up to the demand curve straight up, at Q3, people are willing to pay R4. That's not what they're paying, but they're willing to pay that. I don't know which one that answer is. Does that make sense, Owen? KG, we use 1/2 base times height anytime we're trying to figure out like the area of a triangle. So it would be if they're asking you about how to figure out consumer surplus, how to figure out producer surplus, or deadweight loss, and those are like triangles. Is that good, KG?
Can we do an example of like a dead weight loss one?
I don't have, but here, I'm gonna just make it up. Let's just say this, the dead weight loss, that little triangle, right? And this is 2, and this is 6, and this is 10, and then the next one is 20. The height would be 6 minus 2, that's that line, that's 4. I'll get 84 in a second. And then the base is 20 minus 10, 10. Would be 10 times 4, which is 40, but it's 1/2 base times height. Then you'd have to divide it by 2. Does that make sense?
Wait, you said 20 minus 10? Wait, where'd you get the 10?
10 is like where Q1 is, and the 20 is where Q2 is, and that would be the base of the
Oh,
triangle.
okay. That makes sense.
Okay? All right, let me see. Let me try to erase this and scroll down to 84. Suppose the price elasticity of demand for yachts equals 4.04, while the price elasticity of supply for yachts equals 0.22. Okay, so demand is more elastic, supply is more inelastic. If Congress reinstates a luxury tax, so we're going to put more of the tax on supply. Yacht buyers. No, they will not. So the yacht buyers will pay the entire tax. No. Yacht buyers will pay a larger. No, it's more elastic. That's not true. Yacht builders and buyers, no, they're not going to share because the supply for yachts is inelastic by being less than 1. No. Yacht builders, it's E. Yacht builders will pay a larger share because it's inelastic, and the inelastic person will always bear the bigger burden. Did that make sense? We found out it was inelastic, Ryan, because the demand elasticity was 0.22, which is less than 1. And it was 4.04 for yachts, which is greater than 1, and that made it elastic. Uh, 13. Okay, let me scroll up. Which of the following would result in a movement along the demand curve? All right, a change in preferences shifts the curve. An increase in the number of buyers shifts the curve. An increase in the number of suppliers, that would be C, would be the answer. So here is your, okay. All right, so here, an increase in the number of suppliers. So you'd go from A here, B, you would collide along the demand curve. I don't have whoever asked that question, but does that make sense to the person who asked it? Yeah, I hope so. Any other questions? Okay, if you haven't done all the practice tests, we'll be in my room tomorrow before school at 7:45. I'll also be in the ARC. Yeah, I'll do that in a second. I'll also be in the ARC, probably the second half of period 1, periods 2 and 3. Demand elastic in the middle, unit, and at the bottom, inelastic. Supply, it goes elastic and then elastic. And I would say there's definitely a question like that on the test.
Mr. Brussel,
Yes.
can we go over an example of like trying to find like the producer or like the consumer surplus from like a graph?
You mean numbers wise or just
Numbers
net?
wise, yeah. Numbers wise.
All right, let me see. Is there? I'm just trying to see, are there any graphs here that are already made that? All right, I'll make my own graph. Say the price is 5 and the top of the demand curve is 10 and the equilibrium is 50. All right. So the formula is half base times height. So the height is 10 minus 5. That gives you 5. The base is 50 minus 0. That's 50. So 5 times 50 divided by 2. So it'd be 250 divided by 2, which is 125. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, anyone?